So our next presenter has a incredibly impressive resume in cybersecurity. So just to give you a little background, he started his career in the CIA and working in the cyber part of the Central Intelligence Agency. Worked on both defending our country as well as being on the offensive. He was asked by President Obama to be on the Cyber Commission, where they wrote the cyber guidelines for protecting the US government. He's given cyber briefings to three US presidents. He's been on numerous television stations talking about cybersecurity, written 4 books about cybersecurity, and now he has his own consulting company, and he's got a wide range of clients, very impressive, Fortune 500 clients, I mean, really, really impressive. And he's right at the forefront of what's happening in cybersecurity. And I think we've had the really good fortune that he came and met with Nil talking, it was about 2 months ago, and basically talking about where Netscout is going. And he's here to talk about, of course, what's happening in cyber, but why Netscout is particularly well positioned to succeed in this market. So please join me in welcoming to stage Dr. Eric Cole.
It doesn't matter the size of the company. It doesn't matter what industry the company is in. It doesn't matter if it's public or private sector. And even the revenue and the profitability doesn't matter. The one thing that we can guarantee that is the same with every company around the world, executives and board of directors are concerned about cybersecurity. It is one of the top priorities that is brought up in boardrooms on a constant basis, and it is something that executives are always concerned about. Now, what makes cybersecurity so unique is if you look at top issues that boards and companies face, normally they have the issue for a year, and they solve it, and they move on. Cybersecurity has been one of the top priorities for companies year after year after year after year. And the reason is nobody can solve it. Nobody can figure out the solution to the problem. And this is creating a lot of frustration in the industry. Now, the reason why nobody is able to solve the problem is because nobody knows what the problem is. I'll give you a simple example. Everyone in this room has heard of cybersecurity. We use it on a regular basis. Every executive I talk to, every board I present to, every boardroom I sit on, cybersecurity is a common term that everyone uses. But let's do a little experiment. Don't actually do this, but imagine if I had you take out a piece of paper and you had 45 seconds to write down a 1-sentence definition of cybersecurity. Could you do it? I will tell you, most executives can't. I go up to executives and they go, Eric, I'm struggling with cybersecurity. You need to help us. I say, great. What is cybersecurity? Oh, Eric, you know. No, I'm asking you. Well, you know it's cybersecurity. It's hackers. It's malware. It's ransomware. One of my favorite answers from the CEO of Saudi Aramco, when I said, what is cybersecurity? He says, oh, you're the people that make my life difficult. And I smiled and said, not anymore. I'm here to make your life easy, right? Because that's what cybersecurity is. So let's start off by defining what the problem is. Because if we know what the problem is, all the answers lie in this one slide, and then we can come up with a solution to that problem. So in one sentence, cybersecurity is all about understanding, managing, and mitigating the risk of your critical data being disclosed, altered, or denied access. Now, if we want to start getting to the magic of solving this problem for our customers, which, by the way, my goal over the next 40 minutes is not to teach you anything. It's not to educate you on cybersecurity. My goal over the next 40 minutes is to transform your thinking. Is to transform your thinking in that this is a solvable problem, and Netscout has the unique solution to this problem. So, looking at this definition, what is a key part of cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is about risk. What is risk? Risk is the probability of loss. It's the probability of something happening, which means if it's a risk-based decision, the probability of it happening is not zero. If something has no chance of occurring and no chance of happening, it's not risk and it's not cybersecurity. So in cybersecurity, things are going to happen. Breaches are going to occur and incidents are going to happen. So here's why companies continue to write checks after check after check to solve the problem of cybersecurity, and they're not able to solve it because the current way they're trying to solve it is with prevention. They are trying to stop all attacks. They are trying to guarantee and say our organization is 100% secure and we're never going to have a breach and we're never going to have an incident. And the reality is we are at the point in time today that prevention has gone as far as it could. Companies have tried to get as much water out of that sponge. They keep trying to squeeze it as tight as possible. They made a last attempt last year with AI, right, to do that. But the reality is prevention has taken us as far as we can in cybersecurity. And the way we solve this problem is with detection. The way we solve this problem is by giving our customers visibility into what's happening so they can actually see, respond, and react to the attacks. We are in the day and age where the way this problem gets solved is by having complete visibility to detect attacks in a timely manner. Now, there's something even more magical about this slide. If we look at this slide a little differently, the solution to the problem and the reason why Netscout is in a unique position to solve it will be revealed. Let's look at this slide again. If I'm trying to understand, manage, and mitigate what's happening to my critical data, if I want to understand who's accessing my critical data, who's stealing my critical data, who's modifying my critical data, or who's deleting my critical data, where does all of that happen? On the network. If I'm an attacker and I'm going to break into your server, I have to send network packets. Those network packets have to go across the network. They have to go to your system and server. They have to issue commands. They have to tell that system or server to do something. So if we want to get visibility into what attackers are doing and what's happening on our network, it's all on the network. It's all in the network logs. That gives all the visibility that you need to be able to see exactly what is happening and what's occurring on the network. And Netscout is one of the few companies that can provide that visibility. They can actually give companies, here's what's happening on your network, here's what's occurring, and here's the magic of Netscout. So many solutions out there will tell you you've been attacked. They've told you you've been broken into. So what do? You clean it up, and what happens 3 months later? You get broken into again because none of the solutions out there tell you the root cause. They don't tell you how the attacker actually got in. So I sit there and get broken into, and I clean up the mess, but the vulnerability that was exploited is still there. So what happens? They break back in, and they break back in, and they break back in. Well, one of the things I love about Netscout, it gives you the root cause. It has the visibility into the network and the logs to show you this is how the attacker got in. This is how the attacker compromised your network, and then it lets you fix the problem permanently so the attacker can't keep coming back in and back in and back in. So now let's go and sort of dissect down these areas of detection, network traffic, and visibility. And one little trick here. This took me a long time to learn. I'm a security professional, but as with everybody, we're always selling. Everybody always sells. I would always get so excited about a solution that I would go in and start explaining the solution to our customers. But the issue was they never understood the problem. So one of the tricks in cybersecurity sales that I've learned is before you start selling the solution, you have to educate your customer on the problem. Because they don't understand the problem. They don't understand that we have to move from prevention to detection. They don't understand that the gold lies in the network traffic. So I urge you, when you're working with your customers, start with education. And once they're educated and they know the problem, then selling the solution becomes easy and straightforward. So I was recently in Saudi Arabia. I travel around the world. I love being in front of audiences, giving keynotes, and helping people transform how they think about cybersecurity. So I finished my keynote at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and my flight wasn't until the evening. So I stayed and I listened to a couple of the other presentations. After my presentation was a panel discussion. And they go in and say, okay, let's let each panelist introduce themselves. So the first panelist gets up and says, I work for so-and-so company, and we have had no attacks or breaches for the last 2 years. And it's like the audience wanted to start cheering. They wanted to start going like this, like they were a hero, and everyone's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the next panelist gets up after that reaction, and they're sort of a little timid, and they put their head down, and they sort of look up, and they're like, I'm CISO for this company, and we've had 3 breaches over the last year. And you almost hear this quietness. You almost think a couple of people want to start going, boo, boo. And they're sort of ashamed of this. And I'll tell you, I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm watching this go down. It had to be the most galactically stupidest thing I've ever seen on the planet. And trust me, I've seen a lot of stupid. I mean, this was crazy that this is the mindset that we have today. The person who was a CISO that honestly believed they were not attacked, they were not compromised, and had no incidents for 2 years, should have been fired on the spot for malpractice. And the CISO that detected multiple attacks over a year should have been cheered, should have been promoted, and should have been given a raise. We need to embrace the breach. Breaches are not a bad thing. Breaches are going to happen. They're going to occur, and we need to recognize that it's a reality of working in cybersecurity. Now, just to put it in context, if you have a breach and you ignore it for 3 years, and you have 500 million records compromised, and you have $80 million worth of fines, that's not good. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is having a breach in which you have visibility, you detect it in a timely manner, you respond, and you fix the root cause problem. Because the reality in cybersecurity is you cannot prevent all attacks. So if we continue to think that prevention is the solution, we're going to continue to struggle in this arena. Now, just one little update. I know this says 100% security doesn't exist. That's not really true. 100% security absolutely exists, and it's the easiest thing on the planet. I recently had a CEO that was like, Eric, I don't care what it takes or what it costs, I want you to give us 100% security. Easy. We're going to relocate you to Pennsylvania, and you're going to become an Amish company. I was a professional hacker for the CIA, and I've hacked into anything on this planet and a few things off this planet. And I will tell you, in my 30 years of being a professional hacker, I have yet to figure out a way to hack a candle. I have yet to figure out a way to hack a horse and buggy. So if we want 100% security, give up tech. So the real slide should say, if you use technology and you have functionality and you have computers, then 100% security doesn't exist. And here's the other thing you need to educate your customers on. We need to recognize, just like the law of gravity that is always at play, whether you believe in the law of gravity or not doesn't matter. If you step off a 10-story building, whether you believe in gravity or not, it will be introduced to you. You will learn about gravity very, very quickly. And the law of security is the same way. Whether you believe it exists or not, it is always at play and is always there. And the law of security that you need to make sure all your customers understand is quite simple. Whenever you add functionality, you decrease security. Whenever you add functionality, you increase the risk. So the problem is most organizations, when they're making a business decision, they only ask one question. And that question is, what is the value or benefit? Let's roll out a new website that has all of our customer data publicly available that anybody can get access to, because that will increase customer satisfaction, increase subscription, and increase revenue by 40%. As a business executive, if that is the only data point you give me, I'm going to say do it, because a 40% increase in revenue is good. Here's the problem. You have to ask a second question. And the second question is this: what is the risk or exposure? What is the risk, exposure, or impact to doing that? And then business becomes this: is the value or benefit worth the risk or exposure? If it is, do it. If it's not, don't do it. But we have to recognize that every business decision is going to go in and increase risk, increase chance of compromise, and increased chance of an incident occurring to the organization. I will tell you, I'm sure most of you have played with it or seen it, but with AI, if you allow attachments or embedded links in email, you are going to get compromised. It is a guarantee. I recently went in to one of the AI tools, And I basically said, write me a phishing email that anybody in an organization will click on. And I took those emails and tested out with our clients, and we got over 85% click rate. These are clients that tell me, Eric, we do phishing campaigns. We do phishing campaigns and we have less than a 3% click rate. Yet when we went in and threw them an actual email that looked legitimate because it was AI created, it went from 3% to almost 85%. So the world we live in, the attackers have the advantage. The attackers have the upper hand, and as long as we continue to focus on prevention, we're going to be losing that game. But as soon as we switch to detection, we win. Because now, if a compromise does occur, we control the damage and minimize the impact. And let me just put a bow on our definition of cybersecurity. We said that cybersecurity is all about understanding, managing, and mitigating the risk of our critical data being disclosed, altered, or denied access. And we said the first secret is understanding risk. We need to move from prevention to detection. The second secret was network traffic visibility and logs gives us all the answers we need. But the third secret is this. What is the goal of cybersecurity? The goal of cybersecurity is not to prevent all attacks. The goal of cybersecurity is to not say we were never compromised. The goal of cybersecurity is to detect attacks in a timely manner, controlling the damage. And here's the cool part. That's exactly what Netscout does. Netscout has the visibility. Netscout has the logs. Netscout does the correlation and analysis to be able to not only detect attacks in a timely manner, but also say, oh, by the way, here's how they got in. Here's how you're able to stop and prevent this attack from occurring. So one of the questions I always get asked is, what are we seeing with our clients? What are we seeing out there as the big pain points that our clients are trying to deal with? The first thing you need to recognize is we are in a very interesting time and place in cybersecurity where if you're not actively involved in the field and you rely on your information that most people do from the news, you would think that there haven't been any major cyber attacks this year because the media hasn't covered any major attacks. They haven't covered any major compromises, and cybersecurity other than TikTok, which don't even, are there shots of alcohol up here if we're going to get into TikTok? Don't even get me started on that. But other than TikTok being all over the news and being banned, there hasn't been any talk about breaches or compromise. And the reason is this. About 18 months ago, and it really solidified about 12 months ago, we switched from what I call randomized drive-by shootings with hacking, where hackers would just go after random companies and sites, see who they can get into and make a big deal about it, to now what we've seen is what I call the commercialization of cybercrime. Do you realize there are companies, actual companies, in Russia, China, Venezuela, Pakistan, Iran? These are companies that have employees, that have offices, that have logos, that have business cards, that are making millions upon millions of dollars a year, and their primary focus in business is cybercrime. That's the switch. And here's the question. If I am now a company that is professionally doing cybercrime, I don't want it to be covered in the news. I don't want everyone to know about it because That's bad for my customers. I want my customers, and I know these terms sound crazy, but I want these customers that I'm going in and holding ransom, I want them to trust me, and I want them to pay me the ransom every month and every quarter. And if the media gets involved, that's problematic for me. So the amount of ransomware attacks this year, and we are just starting May, has already tripled what it was last year. If you look at ransomware payments for January through the end of April for 2023, it is triple what was paid in the entirety of 12 months last year. So attacks are on the rise. Ransomware extortion is happening at an exponential rate that would blow your mind. It's just nobody's talking about it. Nobody's bringing it up, and the media is not covering it. But what you need to know is your customers are hurting. Your customers are struggling, and your customers right now, today, believe that cybersecurity is an unsolvable problem. They are about ready to give up and throw in the towel, but there's one thing they don't realize. There is a solution to the problem. They just don't know about it. They are just not aware of what Netscout does, and that's your job, is to educate them and make them aware, because there's a solution to the problem, but it requires a complete paradigm shift. And the complete paradigm shift is we need to start getting visibility into our network. If you look at, you want a cool statistic? If you look at every one of the major breaches, the Marriott breach, the Equifax breach, the Sony breach, the Sprint breach, I'm trying to think, there's so many breaches out there, the SolarWinds breach, pick any of them. Do you realize every one of those companies spent hundreds of millions of dollars on security? And you know how every one of those breaches were caught? Network performance issues. Somebody on the IT team said, wait a second, why is it taking so long for customers to log in to our site? Why is it taking so long for people to download their information? In one case, somebody said, why was our network utilization for downloading at 2 a.m. in the morning when it's normally 20% because most customers are sleeping? Why was our network utilization at 2 a.m. in the morning at 100%? That doesn't look correct. That doesn't seem accurate. And every one of the major breaches were detected not because of the security devices, but because of network and IT performance issues. That's where the answer lies, because that's where the damage occurs. If somebody is going to break into a server, they have to send network traffic. There's no other way. There is no such thing as a stealth attack. The reason why we call it stealth attacks is you're looking in the wrong place. Customers are not looking at the right information. So imagine if we had a solution that captured all of the network traffic, correlated it in a way that it could be accessible in near real time, analyze it, look for these anomalies automatically, because yes, it's great that every one of those breaches were detected by somebody looking at network performance. The issue is, it was manual. So it took them 2 or 3 years to detect it. But what if there was a solution that was automatic? What if there was a solution that could go in and do exactly what was done in every one of those major breaches, able to detect the attack using performance issues, but it was an automatic tool that existed? So before we get to that solution, which hopefully you all know is Netscout, I'm trying to build up a little hype on that one, but that's clearly the solution here and why I'm so excited about it. But why do traditional security measures fail? This is one of these areas that I just shake my head. There are several security companies out there that after a major breach, they publicly come out and say, our solution was installed, our solution detected the attack, and the customer missed it. I don't know about you. I don't think that's good for business development. Basically throwing your customers under the bus. Just saying there, I don't know if that strategy was thought out, but you have a lot of companies that say that. And the reason I'm going here is because some of you in the audience that have been around for a long time in security go, but Eric, I understood what you said, that prevention is taken as far as we could, and we need to hand it off to detection. But there's a lot of companies out there that claim they do detection. Yes, but here's how they do detection. Imagine you live in an apartment building and you're concerned about being robbed. So I tell you, hire me and I will guarantee to detect when you get robbed. And you say, great. So here's what I do. I stand outside your building, and every time somebody walks in, I text you, you might be robbed. You might be robbed. You might be robbed. Now let me ask you a question. If every single time somebody walks into the building, I send you an alert that it might be a robber, am I technically detecting when you're getting robbed? Yes. But it's completely and totally useless. Because if you're getting 3,000 messages from me a day, you might be robbed, you might be robbed, you might be robbed, and 1 out of 20,000 is an actual robber, that's not helpful. That's not useful at all. And that's what a lot of other detection solutions out there do. All they do is alert on everything. So technically, they're catching the attack, but it's useless to the company. Because if I'm getting 20,000 alerts a day, and by the way, I won't mention those names. If you take me outside and you want to know the names so you can compete against them, I'd be happy to share, but I won't do it publicly on the recording. But if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, let me know on your competitors you're going up against. But one of the top competitors, they generate 20,000 alerts a day, and one of those is a real attack. That's what you're competing up against, and that's really good news. Because you're competing against products that don't work. You're competing against products where the false positives are so high, the solutions are totally and completely ineffective. So that's the good news. The good news for you is you're competing against other companies that are not doing detection correctly. But there's one little piece of bad news. Your clients have gotten so used to that, they don't realize that a true solution exists. They think all detection solutions have false positives. They think all detection solutions generate too many alerts. They think all detection solutions focus in on the symptom and not the root cause problem. Back to where I started. This is where education is important. You need to make sure that your clients understand that Netscout has a unique way of doing detection. They have a unique way of detecting attacks that are zero false positives or near zero, real time, and focus in on root cause. So here's the good news. Right now, based on the current systems your customers are familiar with, and the fact that they cannot process, or store network data, your customers right now believe that cybersecurity and detecting attacks is an unsolvable problem. They do not think it can be solved. The good news is Netscout has solved this problem. Netscout's ability to be able to store, process, and analyze large amounts of data with new generation detection, they're able to solve this problem. So the best news out there is you have a solution to a problem that customers need that no one else has. Unfortunately, and I don't like to admit this, but unfortunately, many of your customers were like me several years ago, where I had no idea this magical solution existed. I had no idea it was out there. Just to give you a quick history, I'm not the type of security professional where Netscout called me up and said, Eric, we just want you to go on stage and drink the Kool-Aid. We just want you to show our message. No, the journey with Netscout was quite interesting. 2 to 3 years ago, I was preaching this message, saying we are doing cybersecurity wrong. We need to switch from prevention to detection. We need to go in and focus on network traffic and logs and not alerts. We need to focus in on what's happening across the network. We need to focus in on figuring out how to store, process large amounts of network data to be able to figure out the root cause problem. And right now, this was a couple years ago before I was introduced to Netscout, I said no one has been able to solve this, and whoever is able to solve this is going to win the entire market. And then I get a call from John where he's like, Eric, you are preaching our solution. You are preaching what exactly we do. And he read, and I won't hold it against John, because in my intro he said I wrote 4 books. It was actually 7, but I won't hold that against him. But he read my recent book, Cyber Crisis, and he's like, Eric, you're talking about the Netscout solution. And then I had some calls and some meetings with Anil, and that to me was sort of the match made in heaven began, where I had a message and Netscout had the perfect solution. So the two just married up perfectly because, as I said, the market needs detection that works. We need detection that has low to no false positives. We need to be able to capture and get visibility of what's happening across the network. And the only way this is possibly going to work is if we focus on network and IT performance issues. We have to stop going in and looking otherwheres. The network is where the damage occurs, and the network is where the solution to our problem begins. So as I start to wrap up, to me, there's many things. I could probably have 20 slides on what makes Netscout unique, but to me, the big ones is they are the farthest ahead. Netscout is the farthest ahead in advancements in analysis of network data. Netscout is doing things with analyzing and correlating network data in real time that is far beyond any other company I know. And I work with a lot of the companies. I know almost all the entities that are operating in this space, and Netscout is looking at the problem differently. They're saying, let's step back and take all of our knowledge and all of our expertise in network analysis, and let's use that to solve the problem in cybersecurity. They give visibility, and to me, if I had to pick the biggest, best feature, it's the traceback. Customers need and want to know how the attacker got in. They need to know the root cause. Because otherwise, if we detect attacks and we don't know how the attacker got in, we're chasing our tail. We're just chasing our tail over and over and over again. So we need to be able to have that real-time detection and analysis to be able to do that traceback. So as I wrap up, your customers have a problem. They think it's unsolvable, and unfortunately, your competitors, and I'm using that term loosely because you really don't have a lot in this space, but your competitors have left a bad taste in their mouth. So when you come in and say, I have a detection solution, their initial response is, we've heard this before. So what I urge you to do is step back, educate them on the problem, educate them on how detection should be done correctly by looking at network traffic, and then introduce them to the Netscout solution, because the reality is your customers think this problem is unsolvable, and you hold the way to solve that problem. I hope I accomplished my goal of getting you thinking about cyber a little differently, transforming your mindset. I thank you for your time, and good luck in selling.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We will now take a short break.
Over the horizon, she's smooth sailing these concrete seas. Now she headed east down the boulevard. Sure, said I like the way, said I like the way you sail your ship now. Let me be your cargo. I won't weigh you down. No, honey, I won't weigh you down.